Hey everybody. So yesterday on the 1st of April, my wife, Jason the 13th, and Runjin Run and I all went to the Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee. And it was the first time that we had gone to this convention, save Runjin Run. And it was a really interesting experience because not only did they have a number of vendor booths to make a whole bunch of purchases of used and new games and other merchandise, but also had a small arcade area. They had some tournaments for games like Tetris and Hatris, as well as some additional panels and whatnot. All of it was really cool, but we spent the majority of the time in the vending area shopping around for a lot of the merchandise. And today what I wanted to do is just take some time to go through some of the games with you. Now my wife ended up purchasing Tomb Raiders 1 through 3. Jason the 13th picked up a couple of games himself, and so did Runjin Run, but fortunately / unfortunately, because my wallet's still crying, I was the one that had made the most amount of purchases. So, to start us off, we've got the Super Famicom version of Final Fantasy V, which is really cool because, again, this never released in the United States in its Super Nintendo or Super Famicom form, so of course it's all going to be in Japanese here, which is fine. Again, I've got a number of versions that are translated, official, and whatnot, but it's still cool to have a physical copy of this game. Next, we've got a whole plethora of DS games, and I'm starting to collect a little bit more for the DS as the time in the aughts, the early aughts, is kind of like a lost time for me personally, where I spent a lot of that time in my 20s doing a lot of multiplayer gaming on individual games such as Halo, Smash Melee, Rock Band, and all that kind of stuff, and didn't really do a lot of the single-player experience, so I'm sort of making up for lost time and wanted to go ahead and explore that. To that end, the first game I wanted to show is Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS, and I've heard that this is kind of like a continuation of the Sonic Advance series, sort of in a way, and I've heard that these Sonic DS games are really good. Also, I picked up Sonic Rush Adventure, again continuing the Sonic on the DS series, and I've never played Sonic Rush or Adventure before. Again, heard that they're really good. Was also looking for Sonic Dark Chronicles, which I think is like a Sonic RPG, but I didn't see that there. Next up, I've got Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow here, and this is a direct sequel of the Game Boy Advance version of Castlevania. I believe it's Aria of Sorrow, and that Castlevania game is probably one of the best, save of course something like Symphony of the Night, and of course Symphony of the Night is a cult classic, one of the best Metroidvanias, and Aria of Sorrow is probably a close second to that, not counting any of the traditional 2D Castlevania type games. So I'm really excited to check that out, Dawn of Sorrow. There's two other Castlevania DS games, and I'm just hoping that they do a collection of these, kind of like what they did with the Castlevania Advance collection for all major consoles. I hope they do that with the DS games. Next, we've got some heavy hitters, and I'm going to say heavy because these hit my wallet really hard. We've got Dragon Quest VI, and for the Nintendo DS, this is the English version, the translated to English version. Now, you can get the Japanese versions of the Dragon Quest games for the DS for much, much cheaper, but of course, they're less rare and everything, and I additionally want to make sure I've got a copy that I can understand. I have played 4 through 6 on mobile iOS, and that, of course, is 100% translated, but, you know, I don't really like having to play games on mobile cell phones. I prefer to have consoles because I'm old and I'm traditional. But yeah, so I was really glad to pick this up. I've already played this on mobile iOS, so it's really nice to have the physical copy. To that end, we also have Dragon Quest V for the Nintendo DS. This was probably the most expensive acquisition that I picked up on my time yesterday. And this is really cool because, of course, all of these are complete in box, and that's a nice thing with the Nintendo DS stuff in general, that when I was shopping for it, because it for the most part is nearly complete, if not all complete. There were some loose copies of the games, but it's cool because I've now got the physical copy of this. So moving right along here, the next acquisition that I've got, in keeping in the line of the Dragon Quest series, got Dragon Quest VIII for the PS2, and this of course has 2 discs. And the reason it's got 2 discs is it has the demo of Final Fantasy XII in it, but of course you got the core game here. And I already had owned the 3DS version of it, and I played that, and it was okay. The PS2 version, though, is going to be the better one because it's on the big screen, and it's got the orchestrated soundtrack, and it's not like cut down to size the way for it to run well on the 3DS. And honestly, the 3DS itself is not one of my favorite systems, mainly due to that awful circle joystick. But I'm really glad to have a copy of this on the PS2 so that I can play it on the big screen again. And the sad thing, though, is I did see Dragon Warrior 7 for the PlayStation 1 and didn't end up picking that up. And now that I'm thinking about it after the fact, I'm just kind of like, ugh, I don't know why I skipped on that. I did not see Dragon Quest 4 for the DS. It would have been around the same price range as the Dragon Quest games on the DS here, but eventually I'll pick up Dragon Quest 4. It'll happen. My next acquisition I'll show you is Mega Man X Command Mission for the PS2. Looking back, I kind of wish that I picked this up on the GameCube version. I didn't see it until the end of our time shopping, but that's alright. PS2 I'm sure will be fine. I believe that this is a RPG style Mega Man X game. It's something that I had been interested in trying out and checking out, and definitely glad to have a physical version. The one thing is, out of all the acquisitions I have, it's the only one that's probably in the worst condition. There's no manual, and then if you kind of look at the disc, there's like some kind of please, and then like a little taggy or something like that. Whatever. At least I have it, and it is what it is. All of these, of course, are used games. I didn't buy anything unopened because I'm not Mr. Moneybags and I can't afford unopened games. Moving on and sticking with the RPG motif, we've got Persona 4. This is the original Persona, not the PSP version, and I don't know why. I mean, I know why Sega and Atlus are not releasing physical copies of the ports for the Switch and major consoles that they just did this year. It would be nice, but at least I can say I've got a physical copy of this, because of course I have Persona 5 normal on the PlayStation 4. I've got Persona 5 Royal on PS4 again, and then I've got that also on the Switch because I'm an idiot and I apparently have to get multiple copies of some of my favorite games. But glad to have Persona 4. Tried this a little bit. It was really difficult, but that's great for me because I like the tough but fun turn-based RPGs. Next up in that vein of RPGs is Tales of Symphonia for the GameCube. This is the one that is 60 FPS. This is not like the most recent port that just came out for the Switch, which apparently is just god-awful, which is a shame, because this is one of the most well-regarded Tales of games that Bandai Namco, I believe at the time just Namco has released. Again, that's a real shame, because you'd think they would treat this well-regarded series in a much better way. So at least now I've got the 60 FPS version of that. And funny story is, this is actually Jason the 13th. I bought him Pokemon Ultra Moon for the 3DS for a certain amount of money, and the value of this equated to what I paid for Ultra Moon. So I bought Ultra Moon, he got that, and then I got this from his collection. So, speaking of his collection, he also has Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It was something, for whatever reason, I never picked up, but Jason the 13th was not willing to sell this to me. Fortunately, I found this in one of the vendor stalls, and it probably was one of my more expensive buys over at the convention. Nowhere near the Dragon Quest 5 and 6 that I just picked up, but still pretty pricey. Really glad I finally have a physical copy of this, though. And yeah, hopefully at some point Retro Studios will release a remastered version of this, but if not, hey, at least I'm taken care of there. And last and honestly least, picked up Star Fox Assault. And I say last and least only because the games that I've picked up were awesome, phenomenal, and I've heard this is great too. But probably one of the, out of all the games, maybe competing against the Sonic games, this and Sonic games probably around the same level of regard. Still very glad to have this. I don't have Star Fox Adventures. I'm not getting Star Fox Adventures because I'm not interested in that game, to be honest. But glad to pick this up. Eventually, I'll pick up Star Fox Command for the DS. I think I saw it there, but at that point when I picked this up, I was kind of treading water with my wallet, and it was crying from being used too much. As you can see, we've ended up getting quite a stack of games. So it was a very, 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 very successful trip. Was very glad to be able to go on this with my friends and family. We had a fantastic time, and we were already talking about going to our next convention. It would be nice to go to the Portland one in October, I believe, this year, but after this, yeah, I think I'm done getting games at conventions for a while. I'm hoping maybe I'll do too many games again in 2024. So that's pretty much it for my convention acquisitions. Again, we had a great time, but by the end of it, we were probably there for about 4 or 5 hours. We were all pretty tired and hungry and whatnot. So we ended up calling it a day and heading back. We are around the Chicagoland area, so it's like an hour and a half drive jaunt. But it wasn't that real quick and everything. We definitely recommend checking that out if you like purchasing physical copies of games, used games, and everything. The vendors and everybody there were really nice. But tell me, let me know in the comments section below. Have you been to any video game conventions before? What have your experiences been? For me, this was my second one, and while this was really fun, we had a great time. I did like Too Many Games a little bit more. There were a number more of panels and everything that I found more interesting there versus what was here at the Midwest Gaming Classic. Regardless, let me know in the comments section below what you think about gaming conventions, where you've been at. And please make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. I appreciate you guys watching me show off my haul here, and I'll get the fun time now to be able to file these away in my collection. Thanks again, and have a great day.